Bible Answers with Dr. Al Garza.
All right, welcome back to Bible Answers. I am your host, Dr. Al Garza. So today we're going to be talking about where these Hebrew New Testament manuscripts have come from, or where they came from. Some of the questions, the emails that I've been receiving deals with, where do these date from? Where do they come from? Do we know anything about them? And so there are a couple things you need to understand, because some of the people who have reached out to me regarding these manuscripts, some of them are in favor of them. They have great expectations of what's contained in them. Can't wait till they see when they're completely translated. And then others try to dismiss them without even looking at them, or don't really give any credence to them. And this is interesting to me, because just like the Greek New Testament, or the New Testament in Latin or in German or any other either other languages, or even ancient languages prior to the first century, we take every translation seriously, every copy of the New Testament seriously. But the minute we get these Hebrew New Testament manuscripts, about 4,000 of them, then all of a sudden there's no real attention to them. There's no real desire to study them or to see what's in them. And this is what really, is mind-boggling to me. It really blows my mind, because this is another witness, whether you believe they're a translation from another language, or you believe they go back to an earlier Hebrew source text of the New Testament that we don't have yet. It shouldn't really matter. We should be examining these texts and see what's in them and how they compare to what we have today in every translation. This is another preservation of the New Testament in a Hebrew text. Remember what I said before in my other videos. Most or all scholars have said that there was or is no New Testament Hebrew manuscript in existence, or didn't survive. This was said 10, 15, 20, 50 years ago. Scholars would be teaching, well, if they did exist, we don't have them today. They didn't survive. Whatever the excuse was. And now that they've actually been cataloged and scanned and put up, in most cases, it's crickets. Crickets. Nobody says a word. That argument that they didn't survive, or we didn't have them, or they were never copied in that Hebrew, is now a myth. Because we do have them now. Whether you believe they're a copy or a translation or whatever. That old, outdated teaching of dismissing any Hebrew New Testament possible manuscript is now out the window. Completely outdated. Now, we got to keep this in mind, because I don't think people understand the seriousness of these manuscripts. Think about this. We have about 4,000 of them. And I'd probably say more than 4,000. I'm still looking at some that I have not received that are still cataloged but not scanned. But I'd say there are about over 4,000 Hebrew New Testament manuscripts out there in codex form. Some of these manuscripts were put in a miscellaneous Hebrew text book codex. So they might only contain part of the New Testament, whether I found one in a miscellaneous where it had 2 Peter and 1 John, and that's it. One only had the first 6 chapters of John. Now, the dates were unknown, because even though the codex could be dated, 15th, 16th century, the manuscripts, we don't know when they were dated. We don't know where, how, or, by whom. So we need to understand this. Some of these manuscripts we can't date right now. We can't point to where they were. Some of them we can, that come from complete New Testament manuscripts from Matthew to Revelation. There's a few of them that we can look at and study. Some of them are a translation from another language. Some are copies of a different Hebrew text that we don't know how far it goes back to, or maybe it goes back to another language. We don't know. We have some from India. We have some from France and Switzerland and Germany and Russia and Rome. So many different places that these manuscripts are housed in library, and they're scanned in and put at the National Library in Israel. But we need to understand something here. Think about this. These manuscripts, even if they're late manuscripts, 15th, 16th century, 14th century, think about how these would have had to been copied. Before the printing press, before the 16th century or 1500s, before the printing press was done, Everything was done by hand. There was no email. There was no faxing or mail out. Hey, let me borrow your manuscript and make a copy here. These were Jews for the most part, as their catalog. These were Jews who somehow were able to preserve and copy a New Testament in their language, in Hebrew. Where they got it from or what they were using, we don't really know for sure. Some we do have an idea based on the catalog description, and some we don't. But think about that. How hard would it have been to a Jew who is living in a Jewish community to have a New Testament in Hebrew? Or even how would they even go get one in Greek or Latin or a different language, in German, or whatever translation you want to think it came from, and then try and take that whole New Testament and copy it for themselves in Hebrew? How difficult would that have been? Where would they have gone to get that? Who would have given it to them? They couldn't go to the Catholic Church and say, hey, can I have your Latin copy? I'd like to translate in Hebrew for myself. Or go to the Greek, get a Greek copy and say, hey, can I borrow these manuscripts? Or can I borrow that printed manuscript of the Greek and I'd like to translate it into Hebrew for our Jewish community? I mean, it was a very difficult thing to do for a Jew, is to find a way to translate into Hebrew the New Testament for themselves or for their community or for whoever they were doing it for, and somehow preserve it. And then to understand the tradition of the text as a believer, as a Jewish believer, not being a Christian, so to speak, of a non-Jewish believer, but as a Messianic believer, to copy and translate these manuscripts into Hebrew. That would have been a very difficult thing in these time frames. Like I said, we have multiple from different Jewish scribal hands, Hebrew New Testament manuscripts from the 11th, 12th century, even possibly 10th, all the way to the 16th, 17th, 18th century, and everywhere in between, of all the Gospels, all the New Testament and epistles. A number of these, we can literally say right now we have every New Testament book written in Hebrew, and we have a copy of them preserved. And there's about 4,000 plus of them out there. And yet people don't understand the difficultness of the complexity it would have been for a Jew to preserve this in different scribal hands, different writing styles of the cursive Hebrew, Mishnaic Hebrew, of the more medieval Hebrew, lettering, all the way down to the square script that we would have had and even in prior. So it's amazing that people don't really think this through, that this isn't just a copy. Oh, look, another New Testament in Hebrew. Do you understand that this was preserved in different forms and different styles from different scribal hands under certain conditions? We don't know how dangerous this would have been for a Jew at that time. And so, especially with the persecution of the Jews coming from the Roman Catholic Church all the way down, being in exile and going to Spain. I mean, we got to understand this would have been a not so easy task. We talk about, the early church fathers and translating Latin into Greek and how difficult that was, and the limited manuscripts they had at certain times with Erasmus and so forth. But yet, when it comes to these Hebrew New Testament manuscripts, we don't consider that. We don't base these New Testament Hebrew manuscripts the same way we would base a Greek New Testament manuscript. We don't bring it to that same level of critique or the same level of acknowledgement of a witness in these Hebrew manuscripts. I mean, it blows me away that we don't take these as serious as we should. We got, and I can imagine more being found, getting probably to the same as the Greek, 6,000 plus eventually down the road. Within the last couple of years, I've personally found about 4,000 or so, or actually more, just scanned online, and some aren't scanned, but they're cataloged, and we haven't got them yet. So we're still trying to reach out and get those, but we have personally about 4,000 in print that I have on my computer, and then I PDF'd and printed out, which you can see in my last video. So it just, when we get to that point, when do we realize that these are important witnesses? This is the language of the Messiah, Hebrew, the language they spoke during that time in New Testament form. And you'll see how they quoted the Hebrew Old Testament, how they precisely preserved that in the text, how they understood Jesus as Adonai or by the divine name, and in certain passages. You can see these things for yourself. And, so these need to be taken, very seriously. And I believe in some cases they are. The number of really good scholars out there who are taking these and working on a translation. Not very many, though, as well as myself. But most of the Western world is oblivious to this. They have no idea how valuable these manuscripts are to being a witness of the New Testament and in another language, which is the language of the Messiah, going back to that time, to the first century, and how it was preserved in the Jewish mind. In other words, these Jews understood preservation of when they're copying or translating into Hebrew, what was understood concerning the messianic prophecies from the Hebrew Old Testament, to who the identity of the Messiah was, and all these things, the names and the preservation of just certain Hebrew words that can be traced back to the Second Temple period, and the expressions and so forth. I mean, it blows me away that most scholars aren't jumping all over this and examining them to show, the culture of the first century Jew, and preserving and translating, and then coming down to what we have today, even in a translation, and in some cases even as a copy. And if you watch some of my other videos, you'll see some of the things, examples I give. You could also get my book, Hebrew New Testament, Evidence and Issues, which I deal with some of these points in there, and some of the things where the Hebrew actually upholds the Greek and not just corrects it, but amplifies it from the Hebrew. So these things, I think, will eventually catch on. I have no doubt. We are here in the West. We are really using a lot of outdated materials and textbooks and things, and so we don't really get caught up with what's being discovered in the East and Israel and so forth for almost 20, 30 years until we finally catch up. But these will be studied. I promise you, you cannot ignore them. As many as are being found, and if you look at my video, in which I posted here as well with this audio podcast, you'll see right in front of you, the manuscripts that I have found and printed, as well as what's on my computer and on my laptop, and on my tablet there. These are Hebrew New Testament manuscripts written by different scribal hands, preserved, for whatever Jewish community at that time, or for whatever reason, in the mother tongue, in Jesus' mother tongue. So we need to keep this in mind, keep this in prayer. I'm working really hard to try and get these translated. It's going to take me some time. And then once I reach out to others to help out, I will, with other Hebrew speakers, natives, and scholars who are familiar with this. We will, work together on this and try and get these out. But I want to let you know, yes, this does take time. Again, if you want to help support what we're doing and what I'm doing, please buy a book at Amazon. That all those book proceeds, royalties, go right to this project and to the ministry. If you want to give a one-time donation or a monthly donation, some do. I appreciate that, and I thank you guys for partnering up. You can at my website, drlgarza.org, and there you can find some of my book specials. You can buy specials there, or you can donate or be a monthly partner. But this is a task that does need help, does need support to keep us going. Typically, I fund it myself, which again, I can and do in most cases because I own different companies. So I've built a business for myself where I can take the time to do this without having to worry about being paid for it in any other way. So again, I want to thank you guys for supporting this channel. Thank you for growing it. Thank you for all the financial support you've given and those who have bought my materials. Thank you very much. And again, this project is moving forward. It's continuing to grow, and I want to thank everybody for all their support. So listen, keep us in prayer, keep me in prayer, keep this program and this project in prayer, because it's a lot, and there's a lot to these manuscripts. So again, I want to thank you. God bless, and have a wonderful day.
Bible Answers with Dr. Al Garza.